The more you practice becoming someone who people reward, the harder it is to get rewarded for who you actually are. And it's probably not your fault. When we were little, other adults rewarded us for acting in ways they wanted us to. If we were quiet when they wanted silence, we were good. If we were laughing with friends during class, we were sent out in the hallway. Our whole life has conditioned us to seek rewards. What happens when you get so good at becoming who people reward that you can start confusing that version with who you actually are? It's not obvious or fake because it works. And the reality is, most people are performing. Sometimes it looks like charisma or leadership or being the guy who always knows how to say the right thing. But the question to ask is this the real me? Or am I acting as a version of myself that gets the best reaction? And there are layers to this, going from the most performative to the most honest version of ourselves. Most people operate from a first or second layer almost on autopilot. And again, it's not your fault because we can't change what we don't know. You might feel it already. You might resonate with this idea of being performative. But until you start to see it in every moment and in every situation, nothing really changes. As you'd expect, each layer gives you access to a more authentic and honest version of yourself, something that is much closer to your truth. The first layer is unconscious performance. This is where you respond to people based on old patterns and conditionings without realizing that you're doing it. Somebody's in front of you and your body immediately becomes a different version or it knows what version to become, whether that means being agreeable to get approval or being funny because you think that's how you have to operate or being someone that gets attention in social circles. This is all happening below the surface because you don't realize how rapidly you're changing masks based on the situations that you're in. You are performing from habit because this is the version of yourself that has been rewarded before. It's simple pattern recognition that has become so automatic that you don't think about it, but it is completely inadequate to a deeper and more meaningful existence. The question shouldn't be, how should I be in this room? It should be, how can I live my life as the person that I actually am or want to become? This is the ceiling of unconscious performance. It helps you survive in the world, but it cannot help you become free. The second layer is conscious performance. This is where you start to notice the different masks that you put on in different situations. You can feel yourself changing, like shrinking down or being less bold or confident when you want to be in certain situations. Or you think to yourself, okay, who do I need to be now? How do I need to show up for this room? How do I need to show up for this meeting? This layer is super practical. It's where a lot of people operate, and I'll say operate successfully from an external standpoint, because it allows us to feel control of who we are. Before we go into a presentation, we'll ask ourselves, okay, how would this version of me who's a leader present this? And while there's more consciousness at this layer, there's still this approval seeking child inside of you that's asking, okay, how am I supposed to act so they like me? Or what should I say so I don't lose approval? And when you realize this, this layer also becomes uncomfortable because once you see yourself shifting identities as another kind of performance, you can't unsee it. You start realizing how many moments of your life are not really coming from authenticity and truth. Instead, it's coming from fear of being judged or seen as incompetent or weak. And if you can become of the masks that you're putting on here, you can start moving toward that true freedom. Once you see this as another layer of performance, you stop dancing like a monkey, trying to get approval for others, and you stop and you ask yourself, is this who I am? Is this who I really want to be? Is this how I really want to live my life? The last layer. This is where you've noticed the performance, you've seen the mask, and you've decided that you don't want to keep living this way. You go from conscious performance to what we'll call the unmasked self. And I think this is the most powerful and important change a person can make because awareness is powerful, but that alone doesn't make you free. Seeing the mask is one thing, but it's not the same thing as actually taking it off. This isn't just about seeing the performance, it's using that awareness to act from a truth instead of fear or conditioning. Just to be super clear, this doesn't mean you suddenly say everything you think or become rude, arrogant, or stop caring about people. It also doesn't mean becoming this exaggerated version of yourself, because that would still be a performance. Rather, you develop this ability to stay connected to what's true to you in the presence of other people. This is the real test. It's easy to journal about what you want and to imagine yourself as this confident, calm, honest, and courageous person that you know you are deep inside. But as you know, these tests aren't when you're alone in the safety of your environments. It's when you're out there in the world, at work, at social events, where these masks of performance are too accessible. They're too familiar to us. This is where the old systems activate. The approval seeking self will say things because it gets rewarded. That causes us to slip back into performance, often without even realizing that we're doing it. Your unmasked self is this intentional moment where you notice the pattern and you choose not to let it control you. It's extreme mindfulness in every moment. And it's also courage, because your nervous system has practiced these performance masks for years. So when you act without it, your body is going to feel like it's in danger. It's just like an animal feeling safe at home 1 minute, but as soon as it steps outside of this territory, it feels exposed and scared and not certain what's going to happen. So extreme mindfulness also means being aware of this fear and not letting yourself slip back because of it. This is courage. You're not sure how the authentic you is going to be perceived, and it feels dangerous. But I have to ask, isn't that what makes you feel alive? Isn't there something inside you that actually wants this bold freedom? Imagine knowing that you're the same exact person everywhere you go, in every situation. Kind because that's who you are. Confident because that's your standard and you believe in yourself. And honest because you respect yourself more than anything else. This is what you're seeking. Not applause for good performance, but a life where you don't have to abandon who you are to be accepted. So now the question is, what happens when you start living this way? What happens when you actually start living as the unmasked self? What does it feel like? What does it give you? And how is it different than just being another version of performance? So let's talk about this so we can understand where our efforts lead us. First, I do want to be clear. The outcome is not that everyone likes you, and you should not expect this. The outcome is you can finally trust yourself, because when you're living performatively, there's always a split inside of you. There's who you are, and then there's who you think you need to become to get approval. That gap between who you are and who you think you need to become is exhausting. But when you close that gap, you stop wondering, did I say that because I meant it or because I wanted them to like me? You stop asking yourself in every situation, okay, what should I say? Or, what do I think they would like to hear? Over time, this creates an inner peace because you aren't constantly thinking or negotiating with yourself about what to say or what to do. There's no extra layer or energy being directed to figuring out how to act. The second outcome is consistency. You become more of the same person across every environment. You are the same in public as you are in private. You believe in yourself the same way, regardless of situations. This is where confidence actually comes from. You aren't guessing or spending any mental energy hoping what you do gets the right reaction. Instead, you're focused on being authentic to yourself, which leads us to the third outcome, which is clear direction. Because you're not making decisions purely for approval or validation. You may suddenly realize that the way you speak, dress, or create have been built around being accepted instead of what's true to you. And this is where life starts to change from inside out. Not because you're playing a new character, but because you're finally letting the real you make the decisions. And yes, this will feel different and unfamiliar and even uncomfortable at times, but it is your truth. It is absolute and sustainable. So, what do you do? How do you free yourself from the pain of performative existence? How do you go from changing who you are based on where you are and who you're with to becoming someone who trusts himself enough to show the world who he actually is. The first step is admission. If this has surfaced something inside of you, pay attention. Before you can change, you have to admit that something needs to change. You have to admit where you're performing. This is where the process begins. The second step is to understand who the real you actually is. And this could be a whole video by itself, but at the simplest level, it means you need to know yourself intimately. If someone asks who the real you is, you should be able to answer that. Not perfectly polished, but honest. If I asked you now, you can almost feel the energy of not having to perform, of like saying who you really are. You can feel that, right? And one of the best ways to access this is to get outside of your current environment. What I mean is go in nature, go for a walk, don't listen to anything, don't try to fill the space. Just observe your thoughts. And after about 10 or 15 minutes, what you start hearing is what's actually going on inside your head. You start hearing the narratives that you're living with every day and the stories about who you are. And this is where change can happen. You get to ask, is this actually me? Is this what I want? Is this who I want to become? That lets all this become some type of beautiful creation process of re identifying and becoming familiar with who you want to be in yourself. Which brings me to my third step. Create often. Journal, write, speak, record, and make things. Do something that lets you express what's actually inside of you without needing it to win or to get approval or to get ahead somewhere. And I say without needing to win because so much performance is trying to get something, like trying to be liked or seen in a certain way or rewarded in certain environments. But creation without the agenda lets you reconnect to yourself. It lets the real you come forward. And it gives you a place where you're not just responding to the world, but bringing something to it, bringing something from inside of you. And the fourth step is to practice courageously because the real world is the test. Your everyday routines, the conversations you have, your daily life. This is when you start noticing where you put your mask up. This is where you start noticing how you perform in these different situations. And because you're now spending more time with yourself, you can start to see the difference and know what the real version of you would say. It should feel like a confident discomfort. This is probably the best way I can describe it. You are confident that what you're saying is true, but it's uncomfortable because it's not your default yet. And that is okay. Over time, the confidence will go up and the discomfort will go down because your brain starts learning a new pattern. You say what you really think, act who you really are, and the world does not end. Because the goal is not to stop performing forever. We all perform in some way. We all adapt to our environments and roles, but the goal is to stop making approval our master and becoming the version of ourselves that gets rewarded. It's about living a life that doesn't feel like regret or hiding, because then you start becoming someone you can actually respect. So start small. There's one place where you perform or feel smaller or less confident than you want to be. And then ask yourself, what would I say or do here if I wasn't trying to manage how I'm perceived? Then take one honest action. Small is fine because you're not trying to blow up your life. You're trying to teach your brain that this truth is survivable. You're not looking for the perfect final state. You're looking for the daily courage to stop betraying yourself for approval and the daily courage to let the real version of you participate in your actual life. Hey, I'm Rob. Thanks for watching. If this resonates, like, subscribe, or comment. I hope to see you soon.